you watched my review of the MOZA FSR steering wheel last year, you would have known that I was a huge fan of that wheel. With that steering wheel getting so much praise, you may think it's strange that MOZA Racing has chosen to release another Formula style steering wheel so soon. Despite this steering wheel doing away with the built-in screen that made the MOZA FSR so good, there are some serious improvements here. In this review, I'm going to check out the design of this wheel and how it functions during the heat of a race. But before I go any further, I want to disclose that this steering wheel was sent to me for review by the guys at MOZA. As with all of our reviews, this does not impact the outcome of this review in any way whatsoever. So let's kick off with the price, to see just where this wheel sits compared to the other two Formula wheels that MOZA currently have in their lineup. The two other steering wheels that I'm going to be referencing a lot during this review are the GS GT wheel and the FSR wheel. The GS GT wheel is the lowest cost option at just over £450 or just under $600, while the FSR, which is essentially a GS GT wheel with an added screen, sits at around £580 or $720. This new KS steering wheel comes in priced at €300 or $259, putting it firmly as the cheapest of these three wheels. This is a great price range for this wheel to sit in, as there are both improvements and compromises in this wheel's design compared to the other two Formula wheels that MOZA offer. Now, looking at the design of this KS wheel, there is a lot to like, and a few things that aren't quite as great, but I'll get onto those in a bit. First off, if you compare this wheel directly to the GS GT and FSR wheels, you'll notice that this is the largest of the three in terms of diameter. Well, it's tied for the largest with the GS GT at 300mm, and I really like this choice of diameter. Increasing the size from the normal 280mm, which is pretty normal for a Formula wheel, this 300mm wheel feels a little bit more realistic. The downside of this increased size is that you will cover more of your screen while rotating the steering wheel, which can lead to some on-screen HUD elements being a little trickier to see. But in reality, you probably won't spend much time mid-corner looking at your in-game dashboard or HUD, so the impact of this should be pretty minimal. While the diameter of this wheel is on the larger side, the weight isn't. In fact, this is the lightest wheel of the three, and that's in part due to the materials that have been used. Gone is the real carbon fibre faceplate that is used on the GS GT and FSR wheel, and instead, the entirety of this wheel is constructed from a form of plastic composite. The front and rear both feature a carbon fibre effect pattern, which does look quite nice, but upon touching it you'll feel it's much more plasticky and lightweight. There are also some plastic elements across the rest of the wheel. The button housing, for example, and the plate that sits directly behind the front encoders are also plastic, just without a carbon weave effect. All the inputs, including buttons, thumb encoders, and front encoders, are also plastic, with the front encoders looking exactly the same as the ones on the GS GT and FSR wheels. The only non-plastic parts of this wheel are the magnetic shifters, which are constructed from aluminium, and the hand grips, which are an injection moulded TPE rubber. This heavy use of plastic isn't too much of an issue from afar, but when up close and in your hands, it does cheapen this wheel. On first inspection, both the GS GT and FSR wheels appear more premium. Now, I do want to get onto some improvements that this wheel has made compared to the existing MOZA Formula wheels, and these improvements start with the push buttons. The push buttons on the KS wheel have been completely reworked and introduced a much shorter throw. This is nice as it makes each button press more definitive. The shorter throw is accompanied by a much firmer resistance. This means you certainly won't be able to press a button by mistake, although this extra resistance does mean that each button click is louder than on previous wheels. If you're not a fan of clicky buttons, you may get annoyed by just how loud these buttons can be over time. Although the final improvement that's been made to these buttons is the fact that each one features a clear plastic design. This clear plastic doesn't feature any predefined labelling, meaning sim racers can customise their own button layout with the included stickers, And this is a really nice move, as one of my big annoyances is having to look at button labels that don't correspond with the input that I've actually assigned. Once installed, the button stickers feature clear text allowing them to be illuminated by the RGB LEDs behind each button. The colour of each LED can be fully customised as well, making this the most customisable MOZA wheel to date. Good stuff. The housing for the front encoders is also an improvement over previous MOZA wheels. In the past there have been some quality control issues where the encoder stickers didn't fully align with the encoder itself. It's worth saying that this was more prominent in the early days and is something MOZA has addressed, but the rotary encoder labelling on this KS wheel has been printed directly onto the plastic, meaning there are absolutely zero alignment issues. And while I'm talking about the encoders, there's also been a change to the thumb encoders, which is another area of improvement. The two thumb encoders on the KS wheel have been mounted into the handles, rather than protruding into the gap between the hand grip and the chassis. This makes them much easier to operate with quick adjustments being available to make within a split second. You really don't need to remove your hand from the wheel or adjust your grip to use either thumb encoder, which is really nice. One of my absolute favourite improvements that have been made to this wheel compared to all other MOZA wheels is the rev light array. Gone is that diffused light bar, which I really did not like on previous wheels. On this wheel instead there are individually lit LED lights, which is much more realistic and appealing to look at. These can be fully customised within Pit House, where you can adjust the colour, shift pattern and timing. And if you've seen any of my other MOZA steering wheel reviews, you'll know that I honestly hated that diffused light bar on older wheels due to it looking blurry and a little bit cheap. So I'm so happy to see this change, and I really hope this is the new standard moving forwards. The shifters also feature a revised design using aluminium instead of carbon fibre. But the bigger change here is the introduction of a few built-in silencing pads. Everybody who has used a MOZA wheel in the past knows just how loud the original shifters were. So I am glad to report that that sound has been reduced a lot. The downside of these shifters for me though is that I think they're mounted just a little too close to the body of the wheel. When I pull a shift, I will occasionally hit my thumb, as you can see here. This is a big oversight and requires me to reposition the grip that I've used for years while sim racing. It's a problem that a lot of people have, but MOZA really did need another inch here. Looking at the design, I can't even see a way of swapping out the shifter paddles, so this may be an ongoing problem with this KS wheel. Talking of the hand grips, MOZA has tried something a little different here. Gone are the nicely rounded Alcantara or leather grips. In their place are a set of precision moulded rubber grips. These are designed for the contour of your hand to wrap around the grip, and in practice it works quite well and the fitment is relatively nice. They aren't quite as comfy as say the Acertec Forte grips which I recently reviewed, and a lot of this comes down to the thickness of each grip. These hand grips are definitely on the skinnier side, which I'm not a huge fan of, and I think if they were a little bit thicker, the shifter hitting the thumb issue may not be as prevalent, and there would be less overlap with my thumb and fingers at the rear of the wheel. Now, I have touched on the MOZA quick release a lot in previous reviews, but I need to mention it again here. The same NRG style quick release has returned, and that's a good thing. It's as easy as ever to remove and interchange wheels. On this KS wheel there are added internal pins that are used to power the wheel, and it's compatible with the entire range of MOZA wheelbases, which is a big tick. Another big tick is the addition of a hard wire port, much like the one found on the FSR wheel. This allows you to connect a cable from this wheel directly to the MOZA Universal Hub or your PC, and use it with wheelbases from other brands. There are quick release adapters that help you do just this, and it's great to see MOZA embrace this kind of open ecosystem, allowing sim racers to mix and match products from their favourite brands. Overall, this addition to the ever-expanding MOZA product range is pretty sweet. It gives sim racers an alternative to the GS GT wheel specifically, and makes improvements to some of the core issues that plagued earlier MOZA wheels. There are a few faux pas that shouldn't have made it past quality control, the main one being that the shifters are so close to the body of the wheel. And to go with this, there are also some areas of the wheel that do feel a little bit cheaper and less premium than on the GS GT and FSR wheels. If you already have a MOZA Formula wheel, you probably don't need to shell out the money and pick this one up as well. But if you're looking to buy into the MOZA ecosystem, or if you like the look of this wheel to go with your existing setup, then this is a pretty great option.